More everything. That is the slogan for the new GoPro Hero 9 Black. And it's a fair statement, as this year sees one of the most comprehensive updates we've seen, including an all-new maximum resolution. But without doubt, the most obvious change this year is the addition of a front-facing display. Yes, DJI already did it with the Osmo Action, but finally there's a GoPro with a selfie-friendly screen of its own. Other updates include improved battery life, that new swanky 5K resolution, and the usual array of helpful software utilities. Oh, and the removable lens is back, and you'll even be able to buy different lenses starting with the Max mod to change how your GoPro shoots. But you have to read more about that in our review, as that accessory isn't available just yet. But let's get right onto that screen. It's easily the first thing you're going to notice when you take the Hero 9 out of its fancy new packaging that also serves as a carry case. And before you ask, no, it's not a touchscreen, but it's likely too small for that to be useful anyway. Let's be fair, it has to be small to fit on the front of the camera, but it's a decent size for its main purpose, to make sure you're in shot when you're recording to camera. You can customize the display in the settings too, depending on whether you prefer a center close-up, a full preview, and or just have the usual camera info displayed, much like on previous GoPros. You can also turn the screen off completely if you like. Overall though, it's a nice addition that really makes it easy to frame not just yourself, but what's behind you in a way that was difficult before, and obviously it will be well received by YouTubers. That's not the only upgrade here in terms of displays. The one around the back is now bigger too, at about 2.5 inches across, up from the roughly 2 inches on the Hero 8. And this new display looks fantastic, and the extra size really makes watching back your videos a lot more enjoyable and less of a squint fest. It also means that navigating the camera's menus is a little easier too, with the on-screen buttons now a shade bigger. There is a slight downside to all this though, and that's that the Hero 9 itself is chunky. At around 5 or 6 millimeters wider than the Hero 8 on all sides, it's not a massive difference, but you will notice it, mostly in that extra weight. And we're only talking about an ounce difference here, but that also puts the Hero 9 at about the same weight as the much larger Max, and it definitely feels a lot more substantial this time around. But this bump in size is likely a small trade-off for two of the other new headlining features, that all-new sensor and the bigger battery. This means the Hero 9 can shoot up to 5K 30 frames per second video and 20 megapixel photos, which is a substantial upgrade from the 12 megapixel photos of previous years. This is the first meaningful resolution bump since the arrival of 4K 30 on the Hero 4, at least in my opinion, and it doesn't seem to inflate the video file sizes too much, though in my testing photos definitely do take a lot more memory card space. Of course, with the new sensor, the main question really is, do videos and photos look better? And the answer is, thankfully, yes. I noticed a richer, more vibrant colour with default settings, and while things weren't remarkably sharper at 100% crop, the fact that the physical image is larger means that when viewing them back on the desktop they do seem crisper. I can certainly pick out more details in natural textures like trees and rocks, with objects in the distance also more detailed than before. Things like clouds and leaves do still have a slight fuzzy feel when they're far away, but it's slightly less noticeable than before. The battery meanwhile is both physically bigger and larger in capacity, at around 30% according to GoPro. And in my testing, that battery definitely does last longer than the one in the Hero 8 when testing them side by side. Although given that the battery life has never been that great, the extra longevity is always welcome. And it's always hard to say exactly how much longer a battery lasts, as there are so many variables, but in a straight record until it dies shootout at 1080p, the Hero 9 managed about 2 hours 10 minutes, while the Hero 8 gave out after just 1 hour 45. Along with the new hardware though are the usual tweaks and upgrades to the camera's modes, along with some all new tools. For example, HyperSmooth gets an upgrade that includes horizon leveling. This is something you could do with the Hero 8, but after the fact and only in the apps. Now it's an option on camera and it works really well, meaning if you mounted your camera wonkily or you didn't hold it flat, your footage will be level without you having to do anything. There is a hard limit, I'd say at around 30 degrees, after which your footage will rotate to the angle it was filmed at. It's not the smoothest transition, but it's subtle enough. It's also worth mentioning that horizon leveling isn't available in all shooting modes. Time Warp also gets another update with a new half-speed option to add to the existing real-time control. As before, you can activate half speed at any time during a time warp to focus on something or just as a creative effect. It's worth mentioning that I initially thought the setting would still be a time warp effect, just slower, but instead it's actually half of real time, aka slow motion. Not sure why I thought it would work the other way, but there you go. The only downside is you can't easily use both in one video. Rounding out the software side of things are a couple of power tools, or at least that's what GoPro calls them. Just know that now you can set a time for your GoPro to turn on and start recording automatically, which is great for sunrises when you don't want to get out of bed. And you can also set a duration for when you want to record something unattended without having to trim an epically long video later. Perhaps the most interesting new menu option is hindsight. As the name suggests, with this activated, the GoPro quietly records on a loop until you press the shutter button. And this means if you're trying to capture something that's easy to miss, something like lightning or a quick event, you can do so without creating several massive files. In short, it's similar to how Live Photos works on the iPhone, but for video. As I said right up top, there's an impressive amount of new goodies to get excited about. The addition of the new front screen makes the GoPro feel that little smarter and hopefully puts an end to badly framed self-shooting. And I'm always going to get behind any sort of improvement in battery life, so again, that is a definite plus. Mostly, with the new sensor, it feels like the GoPro has taken a step forward as an actual camera, and that's obviously a really key gain here. For years, GoPro's main competition has been the phone in your pocket, and this move indicates it's taking itself more seriously as a versatile photography tool. The rest of the changes to things like HyperSmooth and Time Warp just make the Hero 9 feel a little more refined than the Hero 8, and that's never a bad thing. And the menu system continues to get easier to use, although I do find the touchscreen a little unresponsive at times. The main downside this time around, for those who physically wear their GoPros, is that extra size and weight. And it's probably not a deal breaker, but it's definitely something you'll notice the first few times you use it. This also means that if you recently refresh certain accessories for the Hero 8, aka a floaty mount for example, you're going to have to splash out on new ones again. And then there's the price, and this is where things get a little complicated. GoPro is trying something new this year. Typically the new Hero Black comes in at around $399, and this year there are two prices. If you subscribe to a year's worth of GoPro Plus, the Hero 9 will only cost you $350. Or you can pay $450 if you don't want the cloud service perks. The thing is though, a year of GoPro Plus only costs $50, so there's kind of no reason not to go with that option. It's not like you have to use it. But at $350, it's a solid deal, but for $450, you might want to see how much you really need those new features. For more info on those and the full review, head to Engadget.com.